And the piano's a hip little tool because it kind of allows you to reproduce what all the elements of a band would do. So you have the percussion. The syncopation, which is at the root of New Orleans music. It's very syncopated, very funky. And then you have the harmonic aspect. You can get to play around with these lovely chord changes. And you got the blues. You have the blues. And you have this 12/8 groove from back in the... And then you have what they call here, they call it rumba. It's a slightly different meaning from rumba in Cuba or Spain. But you have this little groove. I'm just going through a bunch of different styles of New Orleans stuff, you know. Back in the day, had a big influence from Cuba, which was the habanera. So back in, you know, like almost 70 years ago, I guess, with Jelly Roll Morton with that. That's the habanera, but you can hear it's pretty similar to this. Which is something that Professor Longhair did later on. And then you got all kinds of stuff, you know. All kind of good time New Orleans jazz, and then you have the real melancholic, the sweet, you know. And then you got your boogie woogie, or you know, New Orleans boogie woogie. And then you got your New Orleans funk. And then you have all the gospel stuff. You know. it goes on and on and on. You go, yeah, Professor Long here. And James Booker used to. A cat called Huey Smith back in the,
Welcome back to LearnPianoLive.com. My name is Jamin, and as you can tell from the countdown clock, the lesson is about to get started. In case you're new with this, there's a few things I'd like to show you to help you throughout the lesson. Today is a beginner's lesson, which means the assumption is you know nothing. Now, it would help if you checked out the Absolute Beginner's Lesson Pack that walks you through some of the terminology and shows you the names of the notes and things like that. But even if you don't know the names of the notes, you've never read music before, you don't know anything about the beats or anything about the piano, that's fine. You're in the right place. You'll do great. Ask a lot of questions. It's a beginner's lesson, so all questions are fair game. No questions are too dumb. These lessons are always guided and shaped by your questions, and if you're live with us today, there's a couple different ways you can do that. One is in the public live chat, and the other is the Ask Jamin a Question button, where you can ask me a question privately, and I won't share your identity in case you're afraid that your question is stupid. But it's not. If you're in the archives, though, then just open up the survey. At the end of that, there's a place where you can ask your question. I will say I frequently get questions from students in the archives watching a lesson from 6 months ago, and I have no idea what they're talking about. So please try to be as specific as possible. If you're watching this at LearnPianoLive.com, there should be a PDF and an MP3 button right next to this video. The PDF will often have additional video links inside so you can get more in-depth instruction on each of the topics. And if you're the kind of person who likes to print out the PDF so you can make the same notes on your physical version as I'm making during the lesson, now would be the time to do that. The MP3 is just a play-along track so you can practice more after the lesson. In traditional lessons, a teacher is going to actually present some new concept for maybe 5 or 10 minutes every couple weeks. The rest of the time is going to be spent applying and refining those concepts. Well, here I'm spouting off hours of new information every week, so it's totally unreasonable to expect you to actually absorb all of that. Instead, the goal of these live lessons is for you to find some little nugget of something that makes sense, but is a bit of a challenge, and for you to go practice it, because practice is where all the improvement's going to happen. So don't feel bad if you have to leave the live lesson and you find that little thing that you're going to practice. And of course, if I'm going too fast, you can always rewind the live lessons or replay in the archives as much as you want. If these live lessons start feeling random or meandering, it's because they are, on purpose. So if you're the kind of person who wants classical training with a step-by-step method, then you're going to want to check out Kloppel Academy on the website. It's included in your live lesson subscription, so you can do both or either. And the upper levels are seriously hard work, but it's going to take you all the way from ground zero all the way up to being ready to enter any major music college as a piano major in classical or jazz. And finally, today we're going to be focused on a particular style of piano, because for non-pianists, they either see that a person can play piano well or they can't play piano well. But for people who play, there's all kinds of nuance, even between good pianists. It's kind of the same as how you have different accents within the same language. So for a person who doesn't speak English at all English pretty much sounds the same. But for example, here in America, this nondescript refreshing beverage is either a soda or a pop, depending on where you grew up. So in other words, today we're going to be making broad, sweeping generalizations about a particular genre of piano, because whether you're playing jazz or gospel or country or new age, they all have their own idioms and their own stereotypes. So let's try something new, y'all. All right, once again, this is not a beginner's lesson. This is the advanced lesson, but all the rest of the information was correct. So let's find out what we can do here with this New Orleans piano stuff we went through. Man, a lot of material yesterday and the day before, so if you've not already checked those out, even if you're an advanced player, some of that might be news to you, just because we are talking about the specific notes and licks and styles that are taken from the New Orleans piano style. So If you've got questions, of course, we will, as always, be prioritizing the ones that are at the subscription site, thelearnpianolive.com. But if you're on one of the other streaming services, we will try to get to your questions too eventually. But let's first just play through some of this stuff using principles we talked about yesterday and the day before. This is the Junkers Blues. That should look something like this. Since this is the advanced lesson, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out and not give you guys the letter names here. Here's your play-along track. Sounds something like this. Enough of that. That's a lot of the stuff that we were talking about. I didn't use the Kansas City Blues scale at all. I probably did somewhere in there. Anyway, let's talk about today's stuff. Today's stuff starts with other chord patterns that you can add in here. So some things I haven't quite said in the previous lessons that are important down the line after you've mastered the other stuff is that this here we go. This second bar right here is really where this C7 comes in. Hey, it's still green from Kindle. Here we go. That didn't make sense to anybody. Sorry. Hang on. Let me get you a blue pen. No, a red pen. There we go. So this really turns into a C7 right there. So it should just be regular C, maybe a 6, and then turns into that B flat comes in on that second measure. That's why that's going to be important. And then the same thing's going to happen on the F. So we're going to go F. And then right here, if we add in the 7 there, then that kind of helps that feel like there's some movement there. Like it's not just hanging out on a C for 2 bars and then hanging out on an F. So that would be C, C7, F, F7, C, G, C. And then this one right here is super duper 7 right here. In fact, on that last bar, a lot of times you'll just hear a G, lots of G's before it moves on to the next thing. So lots and lots of G, super duper 7-ish there to emphasize that we're going back to the top of the tune. Probably on this form, this blues form, it's easier to feel where you are just because the end of it is so end-ish. In a lot of the jazz tunes and stuff that we do, it kind of feels like it is one long continuous song. Even when it's going back to the beginning, it doesn't have that big feeling. But in a lot of the New Orleans stuff, the endings really feel like super duper big endings. You can tell, oh, I don't know where I was in the tune, but I'm pretty sure they just reset and did something significant there. So chord, that's your chord patterns there. The other one is grace notes. We didn't really talk much about this. The flat 3 in the Kansas City Blues gets used a lot right before the 3. But you can really add in grace notes to any of the notes in the key of C. So probably the most convenient ones are before the 5 because there's a black note right there, and then before the 3, you can just kind of drag your finger up to that. Technically, that's... if it was just that note, you shouldn't use one finger. You should use 2 fingers like that, because then you can use grace notes on any notes. You don't have to, like this one, you could use a grace note there, but if you just have one finger, it's harder to drag your finger on there. So if you get used to using 2 fingers for your grace notes, then it's a lot easier. Grace note just means a really super duper short note. Then it's easier to have a grace note on any note, even going a white note to a black note. If you're going to play like in the key of E flat, if you want to have a grace note up to that B flat, you could go from a white note to a black note. And if you're just used to dragging your finger, then that you can't drag from a white note to a black note, at least not that I've ever seen. I don't know. But then Joey DeFrancesco plays his chromatic scale with like 2 fingers. So I'm sure there's a way, but I would recommend you use 2 fingers for grace notes wherever possible. Some places it's not possible. Like if you're playing this chord right here and you want to have these 2 grace notes here, then you wouldn't be able to, you don't have enough, I don't have enough fingers. I would need 4, 5, 6 fingers in order to get those in there. So in some cases, you're going to drag your fingers anyway. But if you can, wherever possible, use those grace notes like that. And so where you'll see those showing up in actual real life playing would be something like this. Hello from Russia on Twitch. Thanks for joining us. So way too much. It sounds stupid. So in real life, right there, I'm dragging to a white note. Oh, I just said it couldn't be done, and then I did it. Yeah, okay, so I'm playing both of them and then getting off of the B. See what I... So anyway, there was a grace note right in there. You're seeing a bunch of grace notes in there, and that's all that is. It's just I was gonna play that note right there, but I just dragged up or played 2 with 2 fingers from that one. So grace notes is kind of a big thing, and then trills is kind of along the same lines, I guess, as far as just like a little trick that you would throw in. So a trill is just when you take 2 notes. Usually it's gonna be octaves, playing them back and forth, or 2 notes that are a third apart, or 2 notes that are a sixth apart. And then as soon as I say that, I'm going to end up playing, and I'm going to trill something else that's a fourth apart or something. But anyway, the common ones are going to be the thirds, 1 and 3, 3 and 5, 5 and 7. That's a sixth. That's a third. Or the octaves. So let me see if I can work that stuff in now. No, I'm not from Russia. You're from Russia. I'm from Sacramento. right. So some of that sounds dorky because I'm trying to cram it in where instead of just playing what feels natural. But that is that thing. We have 2 more important ones here before we get to your questions. The 1-4-1 lick is totally a thing. It's in classical music or music theory known as a plagal cadence, where instead of playing the chord that you're going to, you go to the 4 chord first. In the key of C, the 4 chord would be an F. So if you play an F and then a C, that's called a plagal cadence. However, if you play a C first and then an F and then a C, that sounds cool too. So we've got a C and then an F. This is just an inversion of an F. Hopefully, since this is an advanced lesson, we won't need to cover that. But basically, you're taking not the root. Don't change the root. Keep the root the same. Taking the other 2 notes up by 2. They'll always land on the 4 chord. So that's the 1 to the 4 to the 1 of C. Then when we go to F, that's the 4 to the 1, 1 to the 4, 1. The G, 1, 4, 1, 1, 4, 1. So now I'm just going to go 1, 4, 1. That thing right there. I'm going to try to cram a bunch of those in. Some of them will sound hopefully decent, and some of them will definitely sound dorky. But take the ones you like, leave the rest. Stuff in there. So that's the 1 to the 4. And I'm not really playing the 1 anymore because it's bass player or my left hand or someone's holding the 1 down. So just going back and forth between those, even though that's not in the chord, like we talked about yesterday, making sure you stay on chord tones. That's the opposite of staying on chord tones. It's going away from chord tones and then coming back to them. Cool. So that's the 1-4-1 lick. And then the one that's really close to that is if you go from a 1 chord to a 4 chord and then back to a 1 chord. Keep in mind that 1 chord is actually a dominant chord. It's got that 7 in it, especially if you're in that second measure that we talked about at the beginning of the lesson. So, the 2 notes that you could pick out of the chord, instead of being those, could be those. That makes a really nice transition from the 1 chord to the 4 chord to the 1 chord. But if I take out this one, I'm left with those notes. And then back to the 4 chord, and the 1 chord, and the 4 chord, and the 1 dominant 4, 1, 4, dominant 4, 1, 4, dominant 4. And so this thing right here is definitely a thing on the F chord, G. And here comes the overuse of that technique. Here we go. there's some stuff in there. Okay, so we talked about adding in the 7, and of course, the very end of that, I went to the G7. But before I went to the G7, I went up a half step to an A flat 7. Because going up a half step and playing the dominant chord for lots of reasons, including tritone subs, for those of you who that turned the light on, and for some of you it made you really curious, and others you're like, I don't know what he's talking about. Is he ever going to explain anything at all? No, I'm not going to explain that one, but you can go up a half step before any chord to play the dominant chord, and then come down and see what that sounds like. In a lot of cases, that'll sound good. A flat 7. Half step above C would be C sharp 7. Half step above G would be G sharp or A flat 7. That's the same one we just did. Half step above D or C would be D flat 7 or C sharp 7. Same exact chord. And then half step above the F would be F sharp or G flat 7. So those are ones that we can play right before those chords. If I way overdo it, it would sound something like this. And then I promise we'll get to your questions. Step above wherever you're going to, and then come down and land on the chord that you're going to, and that helps out too. And then you can do all the other stuff that we talk about in the reharmonization lessons. The more you're going to sub out these chords, the less New Orleans-ish it's going to sound in a lot of cases, because you want to keep all the chords relatively simple and 6-ish instead of 7-ish, things like that. No, ignore what I just said there. For your soloing, make sure you emphasize a lot of 6s and not just the flat 7. The regular blues scale that we talked about yesterday that doesn't have the 6 in it, that's you're going to lose a lot of flavor if you take out the 6. So leave the 6 in there in general. And I think I'm going to leave the rest to your questions. So let's do our wrap up briefly here. We talked about alternate chords that you can use and how you kind of want to delay that 7 if you can until that second measure of the C and the second measure of the F. That's going to be your best bet, and that's going to make it feel like it's every measure doing something new and different instead of just resting on the C and resting on the F. We talked about going a half step above and coming down, especially on this last one. That's probably the most common place to do it, but especially if you're soloing, no, I'm going to leave it at that, especially on the last chord. Then you can go up a half step above the 5 and land it. You can even go to the 5 and then up and then come back. I know I didn't show you that one. Hang on. We're on the second line. That's what it sounds like. G, A flat, G. We also talked about, that was our chord patterns that we have. Then we have grace notes, which are just whatever note you were going to play, then you're just going to play a half step below, and then wherever possible, train yourself to use 2 fingers on those. But if you need to, you can slide. You can even apparently slide on a white note to a white note, as I didn't think we could do until I did it today. Apparently I've been practicing that the wrong way. Then we talked about trills, how you just playing 2 notes back and forth. You just want to make sure that your rhythms are even while you're doing that. So a fast one or a slow one, you just want those to be nice and both of them getting the same exact value instead of playing them as fast as you can, but having them be all lopsided and uneven. So whatever speed you need to take it down to in order to be able to play those smoothly, that's going to be the thing that really makes those feel more legitimate as opposed to just two notes going back and forth at a random pace. Okay, then we talked about the 1-4-1 lick, and this is used all over the place. Yeah. So that's the thing. And then if you want to go from 1-4 to 1, but make it dominant, then it'd be 1-4-1, like that. That's a really super, super, super common move, both in this and the other blues stuff that we've talked about before as well. So there's all of that. Go ahead and start sending in your questions. Wayne, you cracked me up. Play, man, play. We'll get to the questions in a second. All right, so our feature of the day today is John Cleary. There's no H in his name, and you'll want to check out his album. His favorite song of mine is one that I've played a million times, and now I can't remember the name of. It is called... Hang on. Come on. John Cleary. Play.spotify.com. Here we go. John Cleary. John Cleary, everyone. It's called... Oh, man. Okay, the whole album is great. When you get back. Nope, that's not the one, but that one's cool too. His music, the album stuff that I've been listening to doesn't sound very New Orleans piano-ish at all, but every time I look him up on YouTube, like everything he's playing is all the stuff that I'm stealing for these lessons. So, his When You Get Back, Cha-Cha All Night Long. That's the one, John Cleary. This song is super hip. You have to hear this. Oh. It was that song. Okay, I thought I had listened to it a million times.
She left me fire when I was back from Hong Kong, and she dug it even better, calling long distance on the phone, and cool and sexy, getting that postcard from Brazil.
Come on, get to the chorus.
When you get back, we'll go cha-cha all night long. But she lied.
Okay, anyway. Go check out John Cleary. Great New Orleans piano, and apparently like some New Orleans funk stuff too. That's really super awesome. So I'm really into his stuff right now. Okay, question and answer time, friends. Let's do this. Okay, cool. Just refreshing to make sure everybody's included. What are the names of the songs that use the Junkers blues pattern? I didn't look them up. I'm sorry. I don't. Whoever you are, email me, jamin@learnpianolive.com. I will find those out and send them to you. There's a ton of them. I promise. I just don't know any of them at all off the top of my head. Sorry. Question number 2. Did you figure out the When You Wish in New Orleans? Nope. I didn't even try. Okay. You ready? It looks like that's our last question. So send in your other questions, and I will get to them. And for just a minute here, I'm going to try, see if I can figure out. Wish upon a star, make such a difference to me. Okay. I really like this part. That part. No, it's not going to happen. That's what it would be for the chords we'll probably use next week, unless we play it in a different key. I don't know, man. I'm sorry, or girl. Sorry, I can't play it. But I'll work it up, and by next week I'll be playing it. And special for you, I will make note and play this in the New Orleans style to the best of my ability as a non-New Orleans pianist. Okay. Sorry, I have 0 answers for any of the questions. There are no other questions. Let's pretend that we had an easy. Where's you find Middle C? It's right there. There we go. Now I feel useful, like I answered a question. Okay. Some weeks are like that. You know, some weeks are like that. Till next time. Next week, actually, next time we are doing When You Wish Upon a Star. I'm going to cover it at the end of the week. I think. No, I don't know. I'm not going to take any more guesses and be wrong again today. Yeah, it's not going to be in the key of C probably. But on Monday, we'll do the absolute beginner's version of it. I'll show you exactly which notes to press, and then we'll do the theory of it, and then we'll cover it. It'll be super great. So until then, I love ya. Send me your videos or your questions. Good luck. Have fun. No? Yes.